You might be surprised to find out that some bands and artists do very little rehearsal when it comes to going on massive music tours. And there are definitely pros and cons that a lot of people aren't really aware of when it comes to rehearsals. Hi guys, my name is Alex Wayman. If it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. I am a full-time music tour manager. I also come from about a decade of production experience in the music industry for festivals, large concert events, and I just launched recently the Introduction to Music Touring course on the website. This is sort of like the entry-level guide for how to get working in the music touring industry. And if you want to check that out, go to the Final Advance website. There will be a link in the description below. Now, in this video, I will be sharing pros and cons to rehearsing for a music tour. I've been on the road for several years with a variety of bands in the reggae, metal, rock, electronic music space, and there are a lot of reasons for and against rehearsals before going on these massive tours, and a lot of these things are things people don't really think about. Now, if you have questions throughout this video, please make sure to put them in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe for more music touring industry videos like this, and if you stay until the end of this video, I will share one of my personal secret tips for mitigating some of the cons that come with rehearsals, specifically cons related to finance. So stay until the end if you want to hear that. So to start, I think it's important that we define what a rehearsal is, what it actually means for a band preparing to go on tour. A rehearsal really is time for the band to get together and run through the compositional and performance bits of their show. So this is running through the songs, the track list, where everyone's going to stand, when everyone's going to take their solos, etc. It's also a time for the crew and the production to come together and get all of their ducks in a row, which is things like locking in the staging, locking in the lighting if you're traveling with a floor package, if you have audio, making sure audio is locked in, as well as anything to do with backline, any front of house audio work, any monitor work, anything that the crew has to do on the tour. The rehearsal space, the full production rehearsal, is meant to give them a chance to come together and dial everything in. So really, it sounds like a no-brainer, right? Like every band would probably want to do this before embarking on a multi-month international or US tour, right? But you'd be surprised. There are some cons that come with doing a rehearsal like this. So let's dive in. So the first pro for why a band should be doing a rehearsal, a benefit of doing a rehearsal, and some of these may seem a little obvious, but it's important to touch on them, is if the band has any kind of new production elements, or if the crew is bringing any kind of new production to bring the show to life. These are things like new staging elements if you're traveling with any kind of steel structures or truss work, or any kind of additional staging that's going to amplify the physical presentation of the show. A rehearsal is a great time to make sure that it's all set up correctly. Also things like lighting, so if you're traveling with a lighting package, a rehearsal is a great time to be able to get those lights dialed in and understand exactly where they need to sit on stage. And of course, other things like backline, so if you're traveling with your drum kits, with any kind of instruments, keyboards, guitars, making sure that everything works correctly before your first show. Production also has to do with monitors, so if you are traveling with a wireless in-ear monitor unit or racks or any kind of pack system, then a rehearsal is an excellent time to make sure you have everything dialed in. You can preset your frequencies, you can make sure you have enough batteries for the run, etc. Really, the pro here is that you have a chance, the crew and the band, to get all of the production dialed in and make sure it's working the way you want it to work. You can save your presets, you can save your files, and that way you can hit the road and immediately know that everything is working the way it's supposed to. Now, a con with doing a rehearsal before a music tour is that rehearsals typically do run up costs significantly for the overall tour budget. In most cases, a rehearsal space will be like a bigger room with full AV audio video capabilities, which those rooms you have to rent, and they can be a little bit expensive. And in most cases, these rehearsal studios provide all of the technicians that come to help you make sure that you have the power you need, that you have the rigging points available, that you have anything and everything you need to make sure the rehearsal goes well. They're usually baked into the cost, so you can't like talk down. Like for example, they usually need to have a production manager on standby, or there needs to be a house LD available or an electrician to make sure that you're not blowing their circuits. And all of these items really just add up to the overall tour budget. Now in reality, usually the tour manager will have advanced all of these details well before it comes time for the rehearsal, and they will have a better sense of how this rental rehearsal cost fits into the budget. If it makes sense, then this can potentially not be a problem, but it needs to be advanced and budgeted for well ahead of time. Which, if you want a video about how I advance shows, whether it's for a rehearsal or for an actual show date or a tour, I do this all day, every day. I would be happy to make a video about that. Just let me know in the comments if you would like a video about that. Next pro of doing a rehearsal for a music tour, and this is probably, again, kind of a no-brainer, is that a rehearsal is an excellent refresher for the bands, the artists, about their music. In some cases, band members live in various places around the world, and they don't always have time or opportunity to rehearse. Or perhaps they've been off the road for a while, everyone's a little bit rusty, and they would like a chance to be able to get together and run through everything before doing it in front of thousands of people. This is mainly for things like where everybody stands on the stage. Like, what does the stage plot look like? How do the band members interact with each other? Where will the vocalist be? How will the band interact when it comes to solos? Is there a drum feature, a keyboard feature, guitar feature? What does the flow of the stage feel like? And then of course it's running through the music. And this is usually the band sort of dialing in their artistic compositional elements, but it can also include folks like the monitor engineer. So if there is a backing track or a click track being used, they need to make sure that it's in time. They need to make sure their parts line up. It's really a beneficial opportunity to run through the music and through the entire set. In some cases, bands will also bring in new members, whether it be a temporary replacement or a long-term or full-time replacement, like a new guitarist, a new drummer, a new vocalist, backup vocals, etc. And a rehearsal is an excellent time to run through the set with them so that there are hopefully no, but probably less surprises on the road. Next con for rehearsals before a music tour, another con for why maybe a rehearsal may not make sense, is that rehearsals add time to the overall tour length. They add extra days depending on how many rehearsals you need. The first issue with time, of course, is that you need to think about renting equipment for a longer period of time. So for example, if your tour is involving some kind of lighting package, or you are renting backline, you will probably have to extend your rental period to accommodate for these rehearsal dates, because obviously you need it. You need to make sure it works correctly before hitting the road. There's no time to pick it up once you are on the road, etc. And that's going to add extra costs to your overall budget. It's also important to remember that if everybody's coming out early for the tour to do rehearsals, that's going to require more crew payments. You have to pay the people to come out. You have to pay for the travel. You have to pay for their extra day rates, day fees. You have to pay for the extra per diems if that is included in the deal. And there's also a bit of a social toll that comes with a rehearsal, because it extends the amount of time that a tour and a touring band, touring crew has to be away from like their families, which as you get into the professional touring world, it's very important for people to spend time off the road with their families. And so if you're asking more and more time away from their homes, that just adds a bit of a social impact on the overall vibe of the tour. Now, if it's one day, it's probably not the end of the world. But if you're doing multiple rehearsal days and then you have to include travel to and from, it can potentially extend the total length of the run by, a significant amount of time. The next pro for doing rehearsals before a music tour is that everyone essentially gets in one place for the tour pickup. One of the common issues with a large tour is figuring out how everyone's going to get to where to begin the tour. Where's the bus picking everyone up? Where's the first date? Where's the trailer going to be located with all of the backline and the gear? This way, if you have one central point, it makes it a little bit easier logistically. And as a tour manager, this is primarily my job, is to figure out these travel logistics and getting everyone to one spot. The logistics of starting a tour can be pretty complicated because everyone is located all over the world. But with having a rehearsal space locked and figured out, it gives us basically one central location where everyone can travel to, and that is our official starting point. We have everything there in time for us to rehearse, and then right after the rehearsals, we all leave from there and hit the road. This also helps when it comes to things like logistics for the bus, for the trailer, for any of the gear, any of the equipment. Rental companies can drop off rentals at the rehearsal space. The bus can meet us at the rehearsal space. Trailers, backline can all meet us at the rehearsal space. Any trucking we have can meet us at the rehearsal space. It's just one location and saves a lot of logistics headaches. Now, a con that is sort of related to that last pro, a con when it comes to doing rehearsals for a music tour, is that you do have to kind of get everything and everyone to one location strategically, and this can sometimes be a little bit complicated and convoluted. For example, if you have all of your backline or lighting or truss in various warehouses around the country, you have to figure out how to get them all to this central starting point, keeping in mind delivery timelines, keeping in mind vehicle weights, and how the drivers that are going to be bringing them. Are you doing sort of a freight situation? Are you doing a contracted labor box truck situation? It really puts more pressure on me as the tour manager, which is not the end of the world. Obviously, it's my job, but it can sometimes be a bit complicated, and there's potential for things to fall through the cracks. They shouldn't, but again, with more logistics being put on someone's plate, it's possible that things may not work out the way we want them to. Not to mention, there are still the logistics of getting everyone's flights to the central location, and thinking about when we need everyone on site means we have to think about how early do people fly in. It's very likely that if we have a rehearsal space for an entire day, we'll want to fly in the day before, and then we have to talk about hotels. So hotel costs, again, are going to increase the overall budget of the tour. And there you have it. Those are a few pros and cons of doing rehearsals for a music tour. Now, if you stayed until the end of this video here, I will share my secret tip for how I sort of mitigate some of the cons that come with a music rehearsal, specifically related to finances and minimizing the cost. And that is, if you can, instead of renting a rehearsal space with full AV technicians, etc., try talking to the promoter or the venue of your first show, the first show of the tour, and see if you can come in a day early. See if you can come in a day early and set up and run your entire show when the venue is closed or when there's nobody there. In most cases, the promoter is going to be super down for that, especially because you're playing the next night. They're already preparing for you. They may or may not be big fans of the band or the music anyways, and they're usually pretty flexible and understand the struggles that bands face on the road. Also, typically these venues will have all of the audio-visual already in place. They may not provide you the technicians that a rehearsal studio would have, but if you are traveling with your own techs, you probably don't even need them. You just need somebody to show you where the circuit breaker is, where the outlets are, and then somebody to unlock the door to the room. In my experience, when we have done rehearsals at music venues the night before the first start of the show, it's also great because we are able to leave all of our production up for that first show, so we don't have to tear it down, pack it into trucks. We are already essentially there, and everything is just left up for the next day, first show. So as a recap, rehearsals are definitely important from a technical and performance quality standpoint when it comes to organizing and preparing for a music tour, but they can add large unexpected costs in both in terms of finance, of course, but also the cost of time and the cost of bandwidth of all the different members and the crews and the bands, etc. I will say that if a rehearsal does not go off smoothly, it can also impact the overall tone of the tour. I've had some rehearsals that did not go according to plan. We didn't get through everything. We were missing production pieces. We were late for the bus call. We were late to the first show, etc. And that can sort of set the tour off on the wrong foot. So it's very important that if you are doing a rehearsal, that it's very dialed in and buttoned perfectly. So there you have it, pros and cons of rehearsals for music tour. I definitely would love to know what you guys think. So if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, put them down below, and make sure you check out the Final Advance website, which will be linked in the description. Again, I did just post the Introduction to Music Touring course on there. So if you are interested in working in the touring industry, definitely check that out. Also, feel free to follow me on social media. It's just @AlexiWayman, same as my YouTube handle. I sometimes post touring job opportunities on there, as well as all kinds of BTS of life on the road. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.